So let's start with the bones of the hand. We've got the hand, and we've got the wrist, and we've got the forearm. Now in our hand, we have fingers that move many different ways. So let's start with the first knuckle that bends, and then the next knuckle that bends. And then the next knuckle that bends, right? Bones. 1, 2, 3, and 4. How many joints were there? 1, 2, 3. Now down to the wrist. That goes forward. Another joint. That's the next joint. This one doesn't just go forward. This one goes backward, right? And it also goes this way. So we've got more movement in that joint, but the fingers are a little bit more limited. They can't really go backwards very much. So that's joints. Now, what's at the back of the hand? Well, you can see that you've got these tendony type things, right? They almost seem like bone, don't they? Those strands in the back of the hand, the strings. No, those are tendons. Now, what are tendons? Tendons are the ropes that tie the muscles onto the bones. Tendons are the ropes that tie the muscles onto the bones. Well, what are those things doing at the back of the hand? There's not very much muscle there, is there? What are those strands doing at the back of the hands going up into the fingers? Well, they're coming from the forearm muscles. The forearm muscles. These ropes, these tendons at the back of the hand are for the forearm muscles, so that these muscles can create this movement, right? This movement. So these muscles are responsible for this movement. So then, where are the muscles responsible for this movement of the hand? Well, they're going to be the front forearm muscles. They're going to be the front forearm muscles. And you can see the tendons of the front forearm muscles as well. Sometimes they're more apparent than others. Depends on the person. Some people's wrist tendons are really pronounced, and for some you don't see them very much. And if I were to take a scan of everybody, I bet the ones with the really tight muscles, they're very strong in their forearm, but they're tight. And they're not very flexible, and they might have some trouble going like that and having flexibility backwards in their hands. I bet I'm gonna see and feel their tendons a lot more than, let's say, a young 14-year-old who has tons of flexibility there. I'm not gonna necessarily detect those strands, those ropes, quite as easily in that person than a person who's having trouble closing their hand, opening their hand fully, and has very tight muscles, and those are tendons. So those tendons, where are they knitting onto the bone? Well, what's going on here? It's going like that. But what about the people who have trouble closing their hand because of this? What about those people with the carpal tunnel problems? Well, those forearm muscles are also responsible for this. They're also responsible for this, partly, right? So this comes from some hand muscles, but a lot of that movement comes from forearm muscles. So if you're having hand problems like carpal tunnel issues, rheumatoid arthritis, clicking in the joints, don't just look at the hand. You also want to address what's going on in the forearm if there's hand or wrist issues, and that's basically the hand. Now what about those bones in there? Well, there's the tendons, but there's lots of bones underneath in the hand, and that allows for dexterity, doesn't it? It allows us to be able to be very specific about our movements in our hands, right? And we've got so many wonderful nerve endings there. We can really feel things well with our fingertips, can't we? That's a lot of circulation. So if you're getting numbness or tingling, perhaps there's not quite enough circulation able to go through. But why would that be? Could be because of the muscles. Because when muscles get overworked or overwhelmed, they get what we call tight. They get tight. What tight means in a muscle is partially flexed all the time. Okay, so if a muscle's looking like this, usually, and it's able to flex and release, you know, you think of that really flexible 14-year-old flexing and releasing, it's very supple, it's very long and lean, and there's a lot of flexibility to it, ability to flex, right? But if a muscle is partially flexed, if it's tight, it's gonna be shorter and thicker, which means it's going to pull the fingertips toward the elbow, right? Or it's going to pull a couple of these things toward the elbow. That can cause pain for sure, can definitely cause circulation issues as well. Circulation issues. Because where are those blood vessels and nerve vessels, lymphatic vessels, all the fluids that go through there, they're going to have to squeeze through these tight little places because our bones are getting squished together. And if you think about it, you wouldn't be able to necessarily measure it. Maybe you could measure it, but the space between here and here gets shorter. There's less space for our body to do what it wants and needs to do. So the wrist, there's two bones here at the top of the hand, that wrist bone and that wrist bone. Those are actually arm bones. So they're forearm bones, and there's two bones that run along to become part of the elbow. Now, those bones have muscles that are holding those two bones together so they don't fly apart, and that we can function, that we can move and do things, grab onto things, write, do art. And those muscles are really affecting function in the hand itself, affecting its mobility. So I gave you a few hints on physiology, on the workings of the body in this one. I'll give you some more hints in the next video on elbow and shoulder, and then I'll continue to give little hints in each video to keep these fairly short, but to teach you a little bit about function and about the body's needs, as well as the body's abilities within the joint, the muscle, and the tendon itself. So that hopefully through this video series of the whole body, you'll gain an understanding of body mechanics as well as anatomy. We'll talk to you soon.